Online Talk Show. I am your host, I'm Jenny Umali, and please say hi to my amazing and beautiful co-host, Burns,
Hi.
Jill,
Hi.
and of course, Rachi.
There you go.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and I want to honor you for giving the best for your children. And because it is our Father's Day special, I am so honored to introduce to you a very fine young dad from New York City, a certified surgical technologist, and a very kind, loving father who is a president and a co-founder of Elijah-Alavi Foundation. Let's all welcome Thomas Silvera. Good morning, Thomas. Happy Saturday. How are you today?
I am doing well. I woke up with some great energy, and I was actually really looking forward to this. Once you sent me the message, I was like, oh, this is going to be very exciting. It's going to be fun.
Yes.
So, I'm grateful for waking up and being here with you guys.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Actually, I really want to thank you for gracing our Father's Day special. And we are so thrilled to get to know you. And I feel that our viewers feel the same way too. I don't know. There's something in me that feels so giddy. I don't understand this.
That's a good energy.
Yes. So my first question is, why are you so good looking?
It's all in the genes. It's all in the genes. My mom and my dad. And then I keep to a healthy lifestyle as well. So although like in my life growing up, I was really into fitness, but then when everything happened with my son, it kind of like I took a turn in terms of like really not caring or whatever. And I was eating horribly. Like I don't smoke, I don't drink, but I did eat horribly like from like 2018 to 2019. And then I made an adjustment in like my health because I went to my doctor. My doctor's like, you need to start changing how you're eating. And so I immediately switched over. Like my son is a vegan because of his food allergies. My wife is also a vegan because that's how she was raised. And religion, they've always adapted to a vegan, like healthy lifestyle. So it's mostly just all plant-based. So I just turned to that dieting and was able to make a big transformation from just making those small changes and then exercising, keeping myself in physical and in mental shape.
Nice.
So
before all this, tell us your past story. Tell us your story. Were you really active in this community? Are you really that kind of person now, or because of your past experiences, you gain wisdom and you turn that past experiences into something beautiful?
It's interesting. Like I didn't know about the food allergy community until what happened to my son. Like we didn't know that there was an actual outlet. And once it happened, it was like almost like everyone came out and was like so supportive. But before that, I managed health and fitness clubs for 14 years. I was active, for a while. I was like, I led the bachelor life up until I met my wife in 2010. And then from there, like life has changed. And, I just always was to myself, like when I suffered from asthma and food allergies as a child. And, back then in the late 70s and 80s, that there wasn't that much information out there. So it was like kind of hard for my mom and my dad to kind of like understand what to do. So it was like almost survival mode at a young age, and to a point that I was able to understand it in myself and take control of that. And I'm an introvert. Like most people don't think that, but I'm an introvert, and I like to kind of like be at peace and quiet and everything. But I do love engaging with people and everything. But my heart has always been full, and and love all people and kindness.
It shows.
Yeah, I always like your
aura.
Yeah, thank you. And I like to walk in that path, and I like to have fun, and go out and just enjoy life as it is. And I think it wasn't until 2014 when I wanted to change life's path. So I got into school to become a surgical technologist, and then from there, I enjoyed it so much. And Sebastian, I just kind of like enjoyed doing what I was doing, and then what happened with my son, it just changed the whole trajectory of everything, what I wanted to do and like my future goals. So yeah, that being said, it led me to this, and actually understanding legislation, how to advocate, understanding the food allergy community on a broad scale, and able to convey the message that is needed. And it's weird because it's like, my cousin had once said to me, he was like, you know, if someone finds out that they have an illness, they immediately go into research mode, and then they find out everything they need to know about that illness, and then you become educated and you become like almost an expert at it. So that's
Nice.
with food allergies. Although I knew how to manage it with my son and myself, there was more to learn. And then once I learned everything about it, it just propelled me into getting my degree in health education and moving forward to getting my degree in public health, just to kind of like bring that into the forefront, especially in the other underserved communities.
That's nice. Thank you so much.
Hi, Thomas. It's nice to finally talk to you on Zoom or online. But here's my question, because you've been very active in the food allergy community. You know, I've been there for like almost 10 years as well. And you're actually one of the very few dads who's been active. I mean, it's a male, not a male, it's a female dominated community, as you know that, right?
No,
Actually, you've seen us talking about having dads who don't really get it, or they're the ones who are like the bad guy, you know, when it comes to the mom. No, with the mom, they try to protect the kids, and it's the guy's like, no, it's fine, you know. It's always, you would hear that in most discussions in the food allergy community. It's like the dads don't get the support or the education, or they're not interested. So anyway, my question is, you're in the female dominated community and you've been very active, right? Since you're the most visible in the food allergy community, was there a time when your wife would say, who are you talking to? Or are there any issues? You know, because it's tough, you know, especially with the internet, you know, like everybody with social media, and most women will be like messaging you or liking your post or whatever, or commenting. Was there a time that it became an issue in your house?
I'm surprised with that question, Rochi.
No, like it is definitely a female dominated space. And, you know, there are a lot of fathers that, you know, they want to do their part. If they don't understand, you know, they will kind of like disconnect themselves from that, and leave it up to the mom. And I'm not discrediting dads or anything, but sometimes it's just like, if we know that the mom got it, we're going to let her take the full ride from that, you know. And there are things I do in my home that I let my wife just take the full ride with. But when it comes to like food allergies with my son, we both take an equal share on that, and making sure that we can keep him safe and protected. And that's the same way we did with our son when we actually were searching for schools that could actually have a child with food allergies. And we're very vigilant in everything. We're very vigilant in everything about it. And, you know, it was just a lack of education on their end. But when it comes to me getting messages via Instagram, Facebook, emails, we have a trusting relationship. So there's no question like who am I talking to or whatever. It's like, you know, we trust each other enough to know that our marriage is safe. So we continue on that trusting path, like moving forward. And I guess it's like, you know, like she has access to everything. We have access to each other. So there's really no who is that? Why is she you? No, it's nothing like that, which is, you know, I'm grateful for.
A very healthy relationship. Well, speaking of social media, by the way, thank you for gracing our show. Have you had any experience where, you know, some women became really dependent on you, like guiding them through, and, you know, I'm a coach, and some really become like super dependent on, like, sort of like me holding their hand throughout their process, and the whole point was for them to learn and implement it. So have you had those?
I've had many of those, and it depending on the question that they were asking, because I always explain to people, I am not a medical professional, although I know and I understand the food allergy space. But a lot of the questions that I will get is like, my son has eaten this and that, and I've tried this and I've tried that. Do you think it's best practice if I do this? And I will say, talk to your pediatrician, talk to your specialist, your allergist, so they can give you the information. I cannot guide you in those ways.
That's right.
And when I will have like the constant email for one person, if I was like, hey, I think you really should look at these resources opposed to what I can provide you, just to kind of like give it an idea that like, yeah, we understand the food allergy space, but our focus is education and training and everything that we want to do. But at the same time, a lot of them are asking for medical advice.
Mhm.
And I can only do but so much on that, because that's a kind of like, that's a tricky subject for someone to try to like give medical advice, especially in food allergies, and you don't
Yeah.
want saying the wrong
How
thing.
about fathers like you? So do you also like uh, get a lot of questions or help? You know, do they ask for your help?
I get no fathers.
Oh,
No,
What?
really?
literally,
I
no
was so
dad.
curious
I don't get
because
dads, like sending messages like every email, every Facebook or Instagram messages is from mom. It's from mom who has a child with food allergies. There's actually, sorry, I'll go back. There's actually one dad, but he's in the UK, who reached out. But he's very active with his daughter with food allergies, and you know he's very strong. But he doesn't ask me questions. Like he would just like say, "Hey, hi," from one food allergy dad to another. So that's one guy that I know of. But he doesn't ask me questions, or you know. But it is like I said, it is a predominantly female.
yeah.
And
Also,
yeah.
it's like you know, when you're driving and male drivers rarely ask for directions.
Oh,
Exactly.
Okay, so before Jill will answer, I will ask question. I'm just curious, why is that so? I mean, Rochi and Thomas, why is that so? Why are there less dads or male energies, or why is there less male people who are like concerned or more or attending to the food allergy issues?
Okay, I'll go ahead. I think on my experience, I noticed that most dads, they tend to be like the cool ones in the family. You know, they're the ones that would bring the kids to the park, like those dangerous, you know, what we consider dangerous things or fun things. That's for them. So when it comes to illness, I think, you know, we also notice that male or most male species don't want to go to doctors, don't want to admit that they're sick. So when it comes to their kids, they might be on that denial stage, like, oh, my kid won't be, because there's a stigma with food allergies. It's like the bubble kid thing.
Yeah.
And especially if they have a son, they're like, no, my son is not a bubble kid, he's like this tough guy.
Suck it up and make
Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why they don't accept it right away. Because with my husband, it took us, I think, 7 years before. It took us one news of a death, which is Natalie's death. I think Thomas knew that. She is the child who passed away. Her dad is a doctor, and she died in the hands of the father giving the EpiPen.
Wow.
And that's when my husband realized that that's a doctor and that's a dad, and I don't want that happening to my child. That's when he started reading about food allergies. But that was after 7 years, because he's still like, oh, it's nothing. Or like with the food, it's like, oh, do you want a bite of this? And my kids already know that they have food allergies. He's been, it took that one big life-changing moment.
Hey, Thomas, this is Jill. So, well, thank you for joining us. This is so interesting to me, this topic, because I'm not familiar with it at all. And I love the fact that you're, you know, out there advocating for your child and really having people become aware more of what's out there and, you know, the information. So if you met someone that, you know, the father just found out that his child had a food allergy or allergies, right? What would be some of the basic things that you would want to relay on as someone that's really an expert in the field?
It's simple. It's like always read the labels on the foods that you're buying for your children. Always read the may contains and made in the facilities. That's I usually tell a lot of people that are coming are brand new to the space. Always carry 2 epinephrines, auto injectors, because it's vital, and I explain to them the reason why they need to carry that. And just be vigilant and advocate for your child, even at home or anywhere else they go. And just educate yourself. There's so much resource out there for you. Like there's no way you can say you can't understand food allergies. There's like a bevy of resources from FAIR to NLGs together, my foundation, several other foundations that can provide those resources to educate someone. And it's just being vigilant and being an advocate for your child. And those are the factors that anybody can take home with them and just learn and then educate others who don't understand.
Yeah. And what kind of, when you found out about your child's allergies, what mindset shift did you have to make? Because really, whenever we take on new challenges, right, it's a mind shift change. And it doesn't matter what area of our life it's in, right? So we get a challenge, it's presented to us. And obviously, in some capacity, you had to make a mind shift change to really embrace it. So what advice would you suggest on that topic?
I would say, like, before making that mind shift, look at like all the aspects of your life. What is there that you're gonna do in order to make things better? And then once you start to execute that mind shift, know that that mind shift is you're aiding and protecting the people in your life. So it's like your family, your wife, or whoever it may be, and start adapting to it, because sometimes it can be hard making that mental shift. A lot of people know it's really challenging because you've been doing something continuously, constantly for so long, and then when you make that change, like how do you stay consistent with that, and without breaking free from it? So it's all about adapting. You can't do anything cold turkey, right? Because it's very hard.
Right.
Who change their eating habits, you actually finding that balance where you can manage.
I have a nephew who actually a peanut allergy, and I think he was in kindergarten. That's when they knew, because he had an allergic reaction by just handling something that this kid who was eating peanut butter sandwich. And so he immediately at kindergarten, he knew like to ask anybody, like when there's food being served, he would ask after that, like, is there peanuts in it? Yeah, or otherwise at kindergarten, he already knew, because he suffered once and he didn't want it to happen again. It was amazing. Like I was watching him, we went to an ice cream shop and he was asking the people serving that if there was any peanuts in the ice cream, and I was like, what? Asking is made me.
Well, see, that's a good thing about like being aware. Like at an early age, you have to let your kids know that, hey, these are the things that you have to be aware of. So the guidance, the knowledge, the learning that we as parents should know how to really talk to them about all these things, because it's not easy. Because especially when we are not around them anymore. My son, he have allergy as well, so it was really bad. And he's half Chinese, so you wouldn't believe this story. I just wanna before Rachi, I just want to tell you that in the Philippines, it's like I don't know how you call it, but he has asthma and he has really like a very bad allergies. And this is funny. So what they do, my ex husband, the lizard, he grilled the lizard and then smash it and then put it in and put it all together in a like mashed potato. And then so we put
I know that.
And then also like the what you call it, the puke or the vomit of the bird's nest. So they put in a soup. So this is like a Chinese thing, okay? So my ex, he's pure Chinese. So my children, they're half Chinese.
Herbs.
So, yeah, herbs and whatnot. Anything that will cure our children's sickness, we have to do something about it. We have to go for it. And so I did. But believe me, I'm like wrecked. Like, oh my God, am I really doing this? Like I'm grilling the lizard. But there's a certain place in the Philippines, we call it like the Chinatown. There's a certain store there where you can actually buy all this lizard. It's, I don't know, did they bred the lizard or something like that? And then the bird's nest. It worked. It worked. I kid you not, it worked. But the sad part is, so for a very long time, he was doing very well until in school they needed a flu shot. I remember I talked to you about this. The first ingredient of in the flu shot is eggs. So after 2 days, he broke up with all these allergies, acne, rashes, all these types, and now he is still suffering. He's still suffering. So I just want to share that story, just you know, just to be in the circle.
Actually, Jenny, you reminded me of our first allergist, because when he looked at me, he's like, I don't know if you're Chinese or whatever, you know, because he can. And then I said, no, I'm Filipino, and he just told me those things. Don't feed your child those little things. And he even told me, are you a nurse? And I said, no, don't, you know. And then he's like, okay, you know about that immunity thing, right? And I said, yeah, because it's you know, in the Filipino culture, they said you have to give a child you know, what they're allergic to little at a time. And he's like, that immunity thing, because my nurses, I've heard a lot of Filipino nurses talk about it, don't do it on your own.
Yeah, it's
He
true.
told me that, because
Wow.
and because you know, there are some practices that we've done probably like traditionally, but of course there's science. But my allergist told me, you know, there are some things that traditionally given, but please, let's work together on this. Don't just feed lizards or those things to your
Thomas,
child.
say something.
No. It's like everything that you're talking about is so right, because culturally, this is how medicine and science has come about, because they take what culture has adapted to and what has been like what we've been doing culturally. Because in the Hispanic community and the African American community, if you're like of a Jamaican descent, anyone from the Caribbean island, they do these type of immunity things, especially if your child has an ailment or an allergy. Is that medicine and science has adapted that, but they do it in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
So they're doing exactly everything that you're doing, but they have the medication in order to stop in the event of having like an allergic reaction or anaphylaxis. That's the only difference, you know? It's like,
Well, good to know. Good to know that I'm not the only one who felt so weird about it.
I'm asthmatic, and growing up, my grandmother's brother will crush all these things in this like little thing, and then will have me like ingest it with like a liquid, but then it would immediately flare up my asthma. So it was like, keep doing it until it's, you know, your body gets used to it. But I kept ending up in the hospital all the time. And I'm like, no more. So
Well, it doesn't work. Yeah.
So here's one of the questions that I want to ask. I mean, I want to ask you, because it would be very beneficial to our viewers and also to my co-host. Will you tell us more about Elijah's Law, how it came about, and the story behind it?
Well, with Elijah's Law, you know, everything that happened to my son was very tragic. And I told people, you know, it shouldn't take tragedy to create change. And I think in history and society today, even today, that tragedy is what creates change and what creates laws. So with what happened to my son, especially in a New York City school system, that, you know, it shows that there is disparity in education when it comes to people understanding what food allergies are, what asthma are, what diabetes are, what anything is, especially in the education system. They go to school not to understand that. They go to school to teach, not to be in a medical space. So when we come in as a food allergy parent and we are giving them all this information, they become like afraid and scared, like, how am I going to manage that? Mm-hmm. So knowing that there was a lack in education system, so my wife and I decided to kind of like put our heels down into the ground, and we worked with FAIR for the very first year from December 2017 to June of 2018 to work on Elijah's Law. And Elijah's Law was to put into place mandated rules and regulations for the school systems, meaning adopting new health anaphylactic policies by making sure that all educators are trained and aware on how to understand the signs and symptoms of food allergies, having stock epinephrine, and and also have an emergency action plan on hand in the event of emergency. The legislation goes in further deep, but it wasn't passed in 2018. It was only passed in the Senate, but it negated the whole entire language that we have written. So we decided to step out from that and go on our own, learn legislation, learn about advocacy and work, and how to write laws. So we scrapped the whole entire section of the anaphylactic policy, rewrote a section for infancy, childcare, and daycare centers, along with pre-Ks, wrote that whole section, which I will read to you right now. It says it gives access for daycares to stock epinephrine, education for every adult that's working in daycares and schools to know the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis, and being able to treat children experience it, and also making sure that like everyone is aware how to handle emergency situations, how to use epinephrine, and get trained how to use epinephrine. So with that law being passed in 2019 and signed by the governor, those become mandated. It's a mandated law now throughout New York State. And although like the health commissioner is supposed to put out the information to the New York City school system, and I always tell people when it comes to legislation and your law is passed, we're celebrating off on the mountaintop, but it doesn't just end there. That law is passed is no longer up to the legislators or your Assembly or Senate to continue doing the advocacy for that. They did their part. Yeah. Now it's our part as, as myself or community, continually engaging everyone in the school system, like, hey, this is a law, this is mandated, make sure you follow these guidelines, because there are implications in that bill that can actually kind of like put harm within your business if you don't kind of like practice these practices. So with that, that's what kind of like was the trajectory of actually pushing us into getting Elijah's Law established and making sure that not just New York will have a law like this. We are starting in Illinois, we're starting in Pennsylvania, Florida, California, New Hampshire, Connecticut. So we want to take it onto a federal level, but since everything is going on in our governmental system now, it's kind of hard. So by going state by state, it makes it easier because you're working directly with the legislators and representatives, and they have that power to move that bill opposed to taking it straight to a federal level.
Yeah.
So we took our grief and changed it into something that will be more impactful, and creating lasting change, not just for my son Sebastian, but for children now and also for the future. Because we're not just stopping at that legislation. There are many more that we're looking into to write into a law that kind of like help in pushing and keeping that guidance and protection for children suffering with food allergies and also asthma.
I have a quick question. Is allergy inherited? Can it be prevented?
Food allergies is the most strangest things. Like as people, we grew up, and then if we will, your mom has food allergies, your child is to be expected to have food allergies. But the way the world has been working, there are parents, and even historically with their families going through their timeline, none of them have ever had food allergies. But then they have a child who has like 7 different food allergies. So now we're looking at whether it's the human species or whether it's the food that we're consuming. So with all the genetically modified foods that are out there, like, how do we pick what is actually causing the problem today? So we have one that can actually, your body doesn't recognize the DNA structure of the food you're consuming anymore, depending how it's developed. Or your body system has created something due to environmental factors or socioeconomic factors, whatever that's happening there, that an actual stressor can actually trigger something in your body's immunity. So there's so many different factors that play into it. That's why there's so much research. You know, there's no known cure for it, but everyone's trying to figure out what is going on.